Right. Well, good afternoon. This is the Genealogical Society of Santa Cruz County Lecture Series, and today we have Exploring the Unindexed Records at FamilySearch with Junel Davidsen. This event is being recorded, and we'll make it available on the Santa Cruz Public Library's YouTube channel in the coming days. And the handout is also available on that event page where you came to register for this event. And I'm going to hand it over to Gail Burke. Gail, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon. We're glad to see all of you here for today's program. This program is presented in partnership with the Santa Cruz Public Libraries on the library's Zoom meetings platform. We thank our library partners, Sarah Jones, Raven Patrick, and Jessica Goodman for their assistance in supporting our program today. Just a reminder, we do have in-person viewing in the upstairs meeting room at the downtown Santa Cruz Library. No registration required for in-person viewing. You can watch the Zoom presentation on the large monitor, and society members are available after the program to answer questions that attendees might have. It's a fun way to participate in the Zoom programs in the company of fellow genealogists. For details, contact Leslie Losey or Mike Epperson, or join us at 1 p.m. in the library meeting room. We have a new focus group, Genealogists Helping Genealogists, facilitated by Leslie Losey. The next meeting will be Tuesday, October 10, from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. in the genealogy room at the downtown Santa Cruz Library, and we'll meet at the same time and place on the second Tuesday of each month. If you have a genealogy question or want to review research strategies with other researchers, this is the place to collaborate in a small group setting. So we invite you to join us downtown on October 10. The Society's DNA Special Interest Group will hold its next meeting on Tuesday, October 3rd at 10 a.m. in person in the downtown meeting, at the meeting room in the downtown library. Look for reminder notices about the time and place of that next DNA session. And if you're interested in accessing the handouts from the DNA Special Interest Group past sessions, or any of the handouts from our past programs, you can go to the Genealogy Society of Santa Cruz County webpage, and I'll put the link in the chat a little bit later, under the category Lecture Recordings and Handouts on the lower left side of the webpage, as you can see on the screen. We held our annual summer picnic in Scotts Valley on August 26th. This year's picnic was at a different venue, Silton and Park, and a good time was had by all. As you know, our membership year runs from July 1st through June 30th. So it's membership renewal time. If you've not already renewed your membership, please send in your dues promptly. And the dues continue to be a very reasonable $25 for the year. The next quarterly edition of our society newsletter will be the October, November, December issue. Please send articles about your genealogical endeavors, brick walls, successes, and research tips to our editor, Lisa Robinson. I have a couple of announcements about upcoming programs before we get to today's presentation. On October 3rd, Pamela Brigham will present a program on getting the most out of your MyHeritage DNA results. And on November 7th, local historian Ross Eric Gibson will present his program about why Santa Cruz did not become Los Angeles. We hope to see you at these future programs. And this Thursday, September 7th, will be the closing day for the current exhibition at the Belardi Gallery in Felton, which showcases From Footpaths to the Superhighway, How Connections Shaped Scotts Valley History. This exhibit has been presented by the Scotts Valley Historical Society. The closing reception will be on Thursday from 5 to 7:30 p.m. at the Belardi Gallery, which is located at 6299 Gushy Street in Felton. Admission is free. So now let's get to today's program. Today we are delighted to welcome Junel Davidsen, who will demonstrate how to explore the unindexed records at FamilySearch. FamilySearch has a huge collection of digitized records, but many of them are not yet named searchable. Researchers need to take a few additional steps to find those records. Using this approach can ultimately save research time and result in amazing finds. This program will discuss different strategies to access these unindexed records and how to find the records of genealogical importance. For many years, Junel Davidsen worked in the San Benito County Clerk Recorder's Office. She has also served as Assistant Registrar of Voters for Monterey County. After retirement, Junel obtained an AA degree in Family Research Studies from Monterey Peninsula College. She regularly attends training workshops, including a recent one at the Midwest African American Genealogical Institute. There is a handout for today's program, and we will be putting the link to that in the chat and how to access that. Junel Davidsen has been a certified genealogist for 14 years. She has held various positions on the board of the Monterey County Genealogy Society, including president, and she is a regular speaker at local genealogy events. Junel is a professional genealogist specializing in courthouse and forensic research. She assists families in finding missing relatives, and she helps estate administrators locate next of kin. Please join me in giving Junel Davidsen a warm Zoom welcome. Welcome, Junel.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for the introduction and for the opportunity to speak on this topic. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and stop my video. And we'll get started. Today, we will explore 3 ways to find unindexed records of FamilySearch. There is a 4-page handout that I hope you can find to help us keep on track during this live presentation today, and I'll be taking questions at the end. There is a huge collection of digitized records, but they have not been indexed into the database online. In the past, the Family History Library in Salt Lake City reached out to many jurisdictions across the country to ask if they could microfilm their records. If microfilming was allowed, those records have now been digitized and uploaded to FamilySearch. As you can see on their blog page from a few years ago, they had 2 billion images in 2018. Now they have quite a few more. Many of them pertain to North America. We're going to focus on the United States records today, but we'll also look at Mexico and Canada towards the end of the program. FamilySearch says that in their blog, it's important to note the difference between digital records and index records. A large portion of the digital images on FamilySearch are unindexed. They can be viewed using image viewer, but can't be searched by name or other search variables as a fully indexed collection would be. And anyone can help in the process of indexing record images like these after they've been digitized, and we'll cover a little bit about that towards the end as well. I'd like to clarify the term indexing as it's used for FamilySearch in creating the entries that are in the database at FamilySearch. They are not the same as the handwritten indexes that the local jurisdictions like the clerks and recorders would have created and have maintained over time. And we will see a few of those today as well. The first way that we explore finding unindexed records of FamilySearch would be through the FamilySearch catalog. And I know many of you are familiar with this screen because this is the way that we would find microfilm to order into our FamilySearch centers. When they allowed ordering, we get them and we view them right in the center. We would use the same screen to find collections that might be of interest to us. I'm using random examples today. None of them pertain to my family history and probably not to yours either. But I was interested in Loudoun County, Virginia, because I had ancestors there. And so I thought I'd find out if they had vital records and if they had online collections. And so in the search results, I got various collections that popped up, probably because they had the keywords vital records, but I'm actually interested in this set of returns. And I always look for those records that were created by a local jurisdiction because I have a bigger chance of finding a copy of an original record that was, filed in, like in this case, the county clerk's office. So I'm going to choose marriage record 1779 through 1914, and you're probably familiar with how FamilySearch displays the descriptions of the records. And here I get 4 options. And I'm going to select this one, marriage records 1850 to 1866, which wasn't indexed when I first started putting this program together. You see the little, my magnifying glass, and this denotes that there are index records in this collection, but we're going to pretend like they're not indexed for our example. Notice that the film number here, 32373, has 6 items to it. This is something that you want to pay attention to. If the film only has 1 item, then that's great. But if you have more than that, then you need to make sure you're in the right item so that you don't get lost. And I can speak from experience because I've been lost several times. Click on the little camera and it will take you right into what was the microfilmed records, and they're now scanned in this 503 image group. So I'm looking for a marriage record that was filed in 1850. And where would I find it within all of this? Well, remember we have 6 items, and each item there is a like a header card on the microfilm. So you would then just go down and see, how many items there are, and then end up with item 6. And then within item 6, then I chose to find, and this is in your handout, the marriage record for a Sanford Alder and a Maria Marshall. And I'm going to go to their handwritten index, which is within that item 6, image number 429. So I put the image number, I already found this. That image number 429 is the index handwritten. And so I'm going to enter here. I'm not going to push the next arrow because if I did that, it would just take me to the next image. Notice that when I put the image number in there, then I get a highlighted item. And to bring that into full view, go over to the left-hand side where it says View Single Image. Click on that and it'll bring up the old handwritten index. Also notice how these records are arranged. So you see that this is an alpha, actually an alpha section. So we have the A's and the B's and the C's or D's and so on. And they're chronologically listed as they were received. So they're not in strict alpha order. Alder comes before Adams, and then we have Alexander and so on. Alder Sanford Mason is the one that I want, and he is on page 1 of the actual records. So remember, we have some index pages ahead of the actual records. So you can see a little bit in the thumbnails that this kind of ends the indexes there. So by a little browsing, you can actually find the record. And of course, he's on page 1. Highlight it. Then I bring up the actual page. So I'll move it over here so it's easier to see. So this is a list of returns for April 12th, 1850 by the minister W.G.A. Eggleston. And a lot of these were actually performed in 1849. So maybe he only made his trip into town once a year. So there's several here that he has done. And here's Sanford Mason Alder and Maria A. Marshall, who were married May 24th, 1829. You'll also notice that there's some other people on the page and on the next page as well. He was, I guess, pretty busy. And you might want to look through the list to see if there's any other people, relatives of your Alston groom that we have. You'll also notice that there's another page by another minister who returned marriages in March, which was actually before the other man returned in April. So once you get to a set of documents, you might take a look around to see if there's anything else of interest to you, because there might be another person in the same surname, or another person in the immediate family or in the fan club. So that's one example. Another example, a more recent example, is the California collection of death records, 1800 to 1994. Now, California didn't require registration of births and deaths until 1906. And so some of these are county records that were kept in the 1800s, though we know there aren't quite as many of those. I did check in the database for our person of interest today is Elmer Griggs, and I didn't find him today, but he might be there tomorrow. But because he's not there, we're going to browse almost 3 million images, which sounds like a daunting task, right? Here are several counties in California that did participate in the microfilming era. And some have older records, some have newer records. It kind of depends on what they had available, I guess, or willing to share. Interestingly enough, a very large county, Los Angeles County, has all of these death certificates online, and they go up through 1960, which is really amazing to me that you wouldn't have to order a record from Los Angeles County. You could just go on FamilySearch and find it. And as we know, death certificates have a lot of information. Today, we're going to look in San Benito County, my county. I worked for in Hollister. I started there in 1976. And so some of the hand indexing that you will see in these books, I actually entered when I worked there. That was one of my jobs, was indexing down in the Hall of Records. So we're going to look in the index book for Elmer Griggs because he died in 1984. So this is the main index that covers 1984, and this screenshot is in your handout. So being as this is the index to all the deaths, starting at an early date, we know that we need to find the G section amongst all the pages, and there's 270. So with a little bit of browsing, you could go through, and I predetermined that he is actually on image 94, but you could find that quite easily, by doing a little bit of browsing. I did delete him. Okay, so I lost him. Go back to 94. Index to death, and Mr. Griggs is here. Now he's in book 22 at page 20. If you go on Ancestry, you will not find the book and page that you need to find this record at FamilySearch. So it's very important to know about these handwritten indexes. This tells you need to go back to San Benito to 1984 and volume 22, not 21, because it ends before his record was recorded. We're going to go into book 22. This is just like if you were at the county, you would go open up book 22. Now here is that place card that I was talking about that they use at the beginning of the microfilming process. So you kind of ignore that. And another thing to know about these records is there'll sometimes be two on a page. So we can't just like go on image 20 and find him we do have to do a little bit of browsing. And I did determine that, was he, I think he's on page, I think he's on image 76. So even though he's page 20, he's actually on image 76 within the images. I highlighted him and I'll bring him up, and there he is. So that is how we filed them in the book. This other number, this 3,585, you will sometimes see in the Ancestry or other databases. And you could possibly use that number to find it within the book as well. You'll see that number, the certificate numbers, quite often. So he was born May 26, 1915 in Wyoming. His parents were Elmer Griggs and Sarah Whitman. No information about their birth, unfortunately. Notice that his social security number is here. And if you were to order a copy from the county, you would probably see this was redacted. I know a lot of counties will redact that information, that is, white it out or black it out. You'll also notice that the name of his surviving spouse is listed here. And the form says, if wife, fill it in with the wife's birth name. So this is Josephine Solly, was his wife. This is very interesting to know that sometimes a man's death certificate will have the woman that he married, his wife, her maiden name, and that's often what we want to find, right? So that is a good thing to know as you're going through the documents. He was a mechanic, worked in the aircraft maintenance business. He lived in Burlingame, but because he died in San Benito County, his death is recorded here. He died in an airplane crash while testing aircraft about 2.5 miles north of Hollister Airport. So just a little bit about, examining documents while you're here. Another example is actually in your handout. You can practice with it. Paul Bertuccio, who died in 1977, and you could go through the steps and find his death certificate in the same way that we found Mr. Briggs. Another example that I have for you today is a document that I found in Jefferson County, Alabama. It's a probate case, and I found it basically the same way, going through the catalog, looking at what kinds of records that they had on film, and then I came across this interesting document pertaining to a minor. So not all estates had to do with deceased persons. Sometimes they had to do with minors, or sometimes conservatorships of people who couldn't handle their own affairs. So this is the petitioner represents that he is the guardian of the minor, Jeanette Virgin Abbott, and that there's some other people interested in this estate. William M. Virgin and Hawkins, and it all concerns this land that's worth quite a bit of money. This was back in 1903, and the estate was settled in 1912. So it took a few years actually to settle this. And so you know by that this case is probably quite voluminous. Apparently the sale has been transacted. And then there's more information, some genealogical information. That's very important to note. In your handout, there's a question, how old was Jeanette? Well, she was 3 years and 2 months, and she resided at the west end of Jefferson County, Alabama. She was in the custody of her grandmother, Mrs. Idora Abbott. And now I'm going to click the next arrow to get to the next page of the document. She resides at the west end, and the petitioner is the father of the said minor, and the said William Virgin is her maternal grandfather and interested in the sale. Mother of the minor is dead. The minor has no brothers and sisters. Mrs. Idora Abbott is the paternal grandmother and tells where she lives. The paternal grandfather and the maternal grandmother of the minor are dead. She has two uncles, brothers of her father, namely Thomas Jones Abbott and Alan Dean Abbott, who reside at the West End, and they're 21 years, they're under 20 years, 21 years of age. She has two aunts, sisters of her father, Mrs. A.M. Frazier and Margaret P. Abbott, who reside in the West End, and one maternal aunt, Catherine Hawkins, who resides in Birmingham, Alabama. This information I thought was very interesting because we get pieces of two family groups, and we also are reminded about the reasons why we want to look for these documents that aren't indexed yet, because even though Jeanette is maybe not my ancestor, I might be related in some way, and so this information could be very valuable. So that is the first way of finding documents that haven't been indexed. Now we'll go to a second way, and this is the One-Step Web Pages by Steve Morse, and we are now on page 3 of the handout. He has a lot of finding tools. He's got passenger lists. He has information about the census. In fact, he's going to be speaking at Moco Genso this coming Thursday about the 1950 census and what has happened since it was released a year ago. He put together a real handy chart for finding both indexed and unindexed records of FamilySearch, and it is quite simplified but very easy to use. He says that there are 1,760 record collections pertaining to the United States, and so he has them organized by state going down and by category going across. So we are interested in Pennsylvania, so we come down here to the P's, and then we want vital records. All of these blue link or blue numbers are actually hot links. So when I click on this number 14, up pops a list of helpful websites for Pennsylvania Vital. And this is really handy because if you get into a collection that doesn't really interest you, then you can come back quickly to this list and pick another collection. In this case, we're going to do Pennsylvania civil marriages 1677 to 1950. And it brings you to, a search screen where you could search for the name if you wanted to, but last I checked, the person I wanted was not in the index yet. So we're going to go ahead and browse. And so we'll sounds like a daunting task, but we are going to actually filter and go into Philadelphia and see what they have available. They have a lot. And so we know it's very important to know something about the people that you're searching for, about when they got married, about where they were married, things like that. And sorry for having to scroll through, but the one that I'm interested in here is the first set in 1914. So I always learn something as I'm going through about these records. Again, you get that header for the microfilm. There's 1,640 images within this collection. And so where would I find the record that I'm looking for is William Charlton. He was married on January 2nd of 1914. And so with a little bit of browsing, I was able to bring up his record. image 56. Then I brought up the actual page, which is in this case a cover sheet. So this is for the application. So you want to go to the next page, 57. And this is their application with their information. William E. Charlton, he was Black, B for Black, or sometimes you'll see C for colored. He was a shoemaker. He was born in North Carolina. Here's his address on North 10th Street in Philadelphia. And he was born the 28th of February, 1885. Had never been married before, didn't have transmissible disease. His father was Joe. His mother was Louisa Gregory. They were both deceased. And they had both, their birthplace was in North Carolina as well. Here's the bride, Grace Boyd, and she's a laundress. She was born in Pennsylvania, lives actually, I think that's Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And she was born also in 85 and never had been married before. Her father was Samuel. Her mother's maiden name was Priscilla Buster, I think. And her father was a laborer, and they were both parents were born in Philadelphia. And another thing about this particular format in Pennsylvania was they asked this question whether they were under the influence of any drug or liquor, or if they were an imbecile or unsound mind. That's interesting. You know, what some of these applications have on them. I'm going to the next page because actually this says that they were united in marriage. It says it's a duplicate, but it is the record that shows that they were married. Another quick example of a marriage license in this collection is for a Morris Ruber, who was born in Russia. He was an operator and he lived on Green Street, born January 7th, 1888. His father was Lewis, his mother was Elizabeth Gold. They were both deceased. And his father's occupation was presser. I thought that was very interesting that they would include that on the form. The bride's father's occupation was clothing business. So this marriage was also a 1914 marriage. This occurred then between the 1910 and 1920 census. Some addresses that you could correlate with the city directories, and also those occupations might be helpful in some cases where you have people of the same name. So let's see, the next example. So now we've talked about how you can look through the catalog, how you can use Steve Morse's site to quickly get to a collection. Now we're going to talk about exploring through the image. And they have a new version of searching through image groups, and they call it Exploring Historical Images. So we're going to look for Mexico. Of course, Mexico, there's a Mexico, Maine, and there's Mexico other places. So it's giving you an option. And so I'm going to select the first one. You can also search through more options here. But for today, we're just going to search through image groups. And the reason I like the old version better is because it puts the refining over here on the left. So out of 674 plus million results for Mexico, I can now search for places within. So I'm going to choose Baja California Sur. And so that will filter down to less results. And then within that place, I can then filter further down to find Cabos San Lucas. And then I get only 14 results. I was most surprised to learn that they have fairly recent death certificates for Cabo San Lucas. And even though I don't have relatives there, I thought I would take a look and see what they have available. Notice how in the way that they have this formatted, they have little numbers at the bottom. So it's kind of easy to find the image that you're looking for if you happen to know the image number. Over here on the right, if this collection was indexed at all, it would say the percentage that it has been indexed. So this collection hasn't been indexed yet, but it's fairly new, so that's why. Over across the top, also on the way that they have this formatted, is you could zip through and find another page without having to go through that big view of thumbnails that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to enlarge this so we can read it together. This record, of course, is in Spanish, but this is for American citizen Robert Louis Esselman, who died in Cabo San Lucas in 2003. He was born September 30th of 1947, and he was born in Minnesota, lived in Minnesota. It gives his wife's name, Donna Louise, her married name, and his father's name, Frank, and his mother's name, Arlene Legal. And it said that he died at the Playa Hotel of Association. And I believe it says here, I don't know Spanish, but I think he was sent back to Minnesota for burial. And there's other information on there if you can read Spanish. I was a little curious, so I did a little search on ancestry.com to see if there was a family tree that had his name in it. And I found one that was the legal tree, but they did not have this death certificate or an image for the death in his profile. But it did say that he was born in Baja, or that he died in Baja, so they knew that much anyway. But, you know, being that this is not one of those database searchable items, they probably didn't know that they could get to it. One time I had to order a death certificate from Mexico, and I had to go through the consulate. So it was just really surprising to me that this information was available. And also, you know, we're going to look at another one for the same group. Sorry, didn't mean to go out of it. We're going to look at page 14, or image 14. And see how it highlights it in blue, whereas the other way of looking at it, it was just highlighted. All you have to do is just click on it. This death record is for a Jose Refugio Corona Morales, who was born 1942 in Jalisco, Mexico, and it gives his wife's name, also shows his parents' name, Aurelio Corona and Zenaida Morales. And he died in Cabo San Lucas, and the declarant is Gloria Corona Lopez. Sometimes the declarants can be very informative as to a place in the family that says hija, so that was his daughter who gave the information. What is interesting also is that for Mexico, you know, we have the 1930 census, and there are some birth, deaths, and marriages that go up into like maybe the 40s or the 1950s. But to close that gap, these death certificates could be very helpful if you're doing Mexican research of any kind. So now we've talked about, we can look through the FamilySearch catalog. We can use Steve Morse's nifty table to find collections, or we can search through image groups. And I have another example, and this one is for Canada. that I wanted to share with you because I just discovered this collection by doing this program. Canada. So we get quite a few results here. We can narrow it down. I chose to narrow it by British Columbia, and we only have 1,200 or so results now for the collections that are available. I noticed that you can also filter by date and by life event. So I decided what's in migration might be interesting to see. And then they have 7 record types within that group of migration. I wanted to look at aliens, but all of these are already checked. So I unchecked those and then checked alien records. And then I got 2 groups of records. And you'll see how these are arranged. They're arranged in alphabetical sections. So we have the A's, and then we skip to the K's, and this one goes from KE to KO. So obviously there are some that are missing, and they'll probably be uploaded, fairly soon. Looking at the first batch, I wanted to just point out that this gives you a description of what the documents are all about, the background of why these records were created. These were the manifests of alien arrivals at Eastport, Idaho for the time period 1924 to 1956. And then some departures and some U.S. citizen arrivals and departures are also included, which I did find. I did find that as I was going through to find examples, which are going to be in the K section. Some of them are better copies than others, so I chose image number 32, and it's highlighted there, so I just brought that up. This is for Edith Mary Kent, who was at the Eastport, Idaho court, February 13th, 1942, accompanied by her husband, Ivan. And it shows that she was born in 1897 in England, July 7th. She's 44, and she's now a Canadian citizen and living at Calgary, Alberta. This is their abbreviation for Alberta. And she gives her husband's address in Calgary. Was she in the United States previously? Yes. She was there for a month in April 1939, and she had visited California. And this time she's with her husband in his automobile, and they're going to see his friend Ed Burns, who lives in Vancouver, BC. It gives her physical description, and it also says that she had traveled to Halifax in September 1919 on the Baltic. Presumed that's when she came to North America. And then you can go through, and the next one would be another person, KE, and they're all in alphabetical sequence. So you'd have to, for Ivan, you'd probably have to skip over a couple of records. So that was a very interesting find. I did not know about this. This is people moving about, and this is 1942, actually during the war. I did find some people who lived in California who were listed here with a big family. Other people saying their sister lived in Kelso, Washington. And again, this is something that occurred between the 1940 and 1950 census. So interesting collection. Here's another page that I just found that FamilySearch had put out in March of 2023, how to find an image in the index collection in historical records. It's pretty brief, not as detailed as what we went through, but something to know because they have information for a mobile app. It says browse all collections. I think that would be, there would be quite a bit of browsing to do, most likely. And the last thing that we'll talk about today is the, kick me out, is the indexing that is going on behind the scenes at FamilySearch. When I worked at the FamilySearch Center a few years ago, we had a man coming in every Wednesday morning to volunteer, and he was actually indexing obituaries. And he showed us how it was done. They're done in batches. So when you complete a batch, then it goes on to the next person, I guess, also indexes it to make sure that it's the same. And then they have a reviewer. So it does take a while to do it. You could find a guided tour here if you're interested. You could find a project to work on. You can refine the results as to beginning, intermediate, advanced. The language, I selected English, but there's a lot of other languages available for documents that need to be indexed. For English, they had quite a few choices. Missouri naturalization records. This one is almost complete. As far as indexing is concerned, 93%, only 41% has been reviewed, but it's likely to be online pretty soon. Eastern District of New York, Alaska Census, Village Census, New England petitions, Zimbabwe, church records, Australia, lots of Ireland, lots and lots of Ireland, South Africa, and we even have a Hawaiian one. Some of them have just started out, like this one in Ireland's only 2%. So it's just barely started on that one. So in review, we've explored 3 different ways to find images. And we've talked a little bit about helping to index if we're interested in doing that. And that concludes my program. And so I'll stop sharing. But Sarah, I lost my thing to stop sharing.
Sure, you can just press escape.
Okay, escape.
Yep, and then they'll come back.
All right, stop sharing.
Sure. People might ask you a question though, and you might have to refer back to it. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
All right. If
just,
anyone has questions, I can easily go back to it. So, okay.
and for those of you who've joined us before, feel free to enter any questions that you have into the Q&A, and then I'll add them or I'll read them off for Junel. Or if you can't find the Q&A for some reason, you could also put it in the chat, I suppose.
So do you have any questions yet, Sarah or Gail?
I don't see any yet, but oftentimes people, wait until the end and then start typing. So let's give them a chance.
As they kind of digest the material. Well, I hope that the handout is helpful for everyone because it does walk you through step by step of the demo that I did today. And so you don't get lost, and then you can practice and then try to find a collection that you're familiar with and practice on that before trying something new. But there are so many records, as you can see, that need exploring.
Yeah, that was great. So do you have a couple of questions? Someone's looking for death records in France. So any ideas there?
Sure, you could go to maybe that record image grouping and see if, by typing in France and then searching the image group and see if your location comes up. Because you probably know the location, right? So it's good to know a little bit about your person, about the time period. And so perhaps you'll be able to find an image. Other than that, you can also go back to the tried and true Family Search catalog and go through and find your location and then the type of information that might be available. France, I think, and some of the other European countries actually do have some images in their local offerings. You might try that as well, not on Family Search, but just searching, by Google.
Great, thank you. The other question says, did you share the certificate you found with legal?
Did I find the certificate that
Did you
I
share the certificate you found with
share it
legal?
with people or with Google?
Maybe in the handout. Or maybe on the screen. I don't know exactly the origin of that question.
Okay, if that was Elmer Griggs that we were talking about, or Paul Bertuccio, I shared oh, it's not in the handout. You're right. It's not actually in the handout. I
Oh, and
think
there's a
that's
follow-up and
probably
it
what you were
says,
asking for was the certificate itself in the handout. You would need to go through the steps to find Elmer Griggs' certificate, and then you can view it on the screen.
and that was there's a follow-up and it says, did you share the certificate with the family, maybe?
Oh, with the family. No, actually, these random examples weren't even part of my research, although I have done research for clients and the public administrator's office in Santa Clara. I did not share this one. I wonder, do you know the family? That would be awesome. Out of, how many billions of records that, I would touch someone that someone knows. That is possible.
All right. You have another question. It says, I'm lost in Ohio, 1800 to 1840. There are so many separate tracts in early Ohio. Which categories of records might be most helpful for southeastern Ohio? And on that note, I also run into trouble because, the counties changed. So towns shifted and then they were all of a sudden in a different county.
Mhm. Right, and Ohio became a state in 1803, and some of the counties weren't formed until 1827 or something like that. So, right, you would need to go back to the mother county in some cases. So, I always look in my standby is going to the Family Search catalog and going to the county. You'll get information about what other counties you might look at. Look at the Family Search Wiki. That's a very good resource for finding other the adjacent counties where you might need to look as well. Other family members might have gone there. So Southeast Ohio, I'm not really familiar with that area too much, but I know that a lot of the record keepers or recorders, what they call auditors nowadays, they actually have a lot of record collections for their deeds online. You might check that out as well. In the Family Search collections, there are lots of deeds that the Family History Library microfilmed at an early date. And you're talking about tracts. So I'm kind of thinking you're interested in deed records. You would want to go to those handwritten deed books or handwritten index books and find the book and page for the deeds that might pertain to your family members. There's information about maybe where they lived at the time, might not have been the county that you're looking in, might be a different county or even a different area. And then you would just start gathering up information about people who witnessed the deeds. Also, you might find some probate records. If you're lost already, it sounds like you've been doing quite a bit of research. If you haven't already tried the Family Search catalog, I would start there. Then I would actually Google the recorder's office in a location where your families live. See if they have any of their records imaged as well. A lot of them have actually online databases. Cuyahoga County, that's north of where you're interested in, Summit County, and other counties, they actually have collections of images and they're tied to their database. So you want to check there as well and try to find that official record keeper's website.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now someone wants to see something again. So I don't know if you want to share your screen
Sure.
before I read it off.
Okay.
Okay, it says, in one of your first searches, you showed how the image was highlighted. Where did you get the image number? And is the image number found in the citation?
So, in the citation, so I didn't have a citation to go with. I just was doing the browsing. So what I started off with was this microfilm, and I think if I can loading controls. Okay, so I went into the image group. And remember, this is the one that had the 6 items. So I got busy and tried to find, you know, the beginning of item 6, which of course is at the end of the roll. And when I found item 6, that is when I looked at the little index that they had. So I highlighted the image for the index. And then I went over to look at the single image and clicked on that. And then I found the listings of the people who were in the index. And I found him on page 1. So I made it an easy example because he's easier to find, being that he's on page 1. So obviously, if we went through like 10 pages worth here, we would go through the alphabet in their hand index record book, and we would eventually come to the page. So what I did was I just, this is the women now. So you don't have to go through all that. What you can do is get the large version and then, you know, browse. If it's not what you want, then you just pick another page to look at. So if we're going along, let's see, we're on 438 now. This is the last page of the women's index. It is good to, you know, get familiar with the way that these records are laid out. And so a little bit of going through the browsing process is valuable, because then the next film or image group that you come to, then you'll be more, you know, acquainted with how things work. So in this particular collection, this happens to be marriage records that were brought in by this minister. And no, I didn't have a citation to go with. I was just trying to find the Sanford Mason Alders marriage record. So I hope that answers your question. Was there a second part to the question, or the first part of the question?
No, I think you got them both. There is another question though, so hang on.
Okay, I'll keep it up.
Okay, how are counties that are listed in the FamilySearch wiki kept up to date when no person or entity has adopted, quote unquote, that jurisdiction to fact check?
Yeah, I actually don't know the question, I mean, the answer to that question, but I do feel your frustration because San Benito County, for instance, they they have the courthouse as the new courthouse, the Superior Courthouse, which is across the street from the courthouse where I used to work and where the deeds and birth and death records, marriage records are held. But it looks like you would go to the Superior Courthouse and that just won't work. So yeah, I feel your frustration. But always check there for some of the linked information down below. They have, what deeds that there are, and I don't usually check there first, but I check the history catalog. That's my go-to family history catalog. Steve Morse's site, I have to say though, it's pretty simple, pretty easy. Did I just stop sharing?
Yeah, you did. That's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so if I missed your question, please put it in the Q&A. But I think we got them all. Gail, did I miss a question, or do you have a separate question?
No, Janelle answered my questions, and Janelle, I appreciate that. And yes, I'm glad somebody shares my frustration.
Were you also the author of the Ohio question?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
We can talk later.
All right.
Okay, it just looks like there's clarification. Someone's saying Steve's site, and then the history images, and then wiki. So is that the order, I guess?
The order of maybe
Order to
find
me checking things, yeah, starting to get going. Steve's site, history images, and then the wiki.
okay, if you're just starting off with FamilySearch and you do know the location where the event of interest is, I would start with the FamilySearch catalog. If you don't know the jurisdiction or the location yet, that wiki would be a good place to start. Sometimes people moved around. I was helping a lady who had ancestors in Georgia, and they died in one location in Georgia, but they had been, to 3 or 4 different places, and the county boundaries hadn't changed, but they had lived or had land. Maybe they didn't live there, but they had land in other places in Georgia. So it's always good to check those counties that are around the county of your interest, especially like in places in Georgia where the counties are small. In California, we have large counties, but some of those eastern locations, small counties. So yeah, I would, my go-to is go through that FamilySearch catalog or go to Steve Morse's site and check it out. It's very simple, very easy to use.
All right, well, thank you for being so generous with your time today and so generous with answering specific questions. Gail, I think we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Janelle, for showing us how to make wider use of the vast resources of FamilySearch. Your real-time examples will help all of us to more easily get the most out of this amazing genealogical resource. Be sure to access the handout for today's program, and there are links in the chat about where to find that. Also, today's program has been recorded, and it will soon be available at the Santa Cruz Public Library's YouTube channel, and I've also put a link in the chat for that. Thanks to all of you for being with us for today's program. Please join us again on the first Tuesday of October, October 3 at 1 p.m. for the presentation by Pamela Brigham on getting the most out of your MyHeritage DNA results. And to register for that, to receive the Zoom link via the Santa Cruz Public Library's events calendar, Sarah's showing you how to do that now on the screen. You visit the Santa Cruz Library's homepage at santacruzpl.org, scroll down to the calendar of upcoming events, and then all you need to do is to register is to enter your first and last name and your email address, as she's showing you on the screen there. And you can click the little yes box down in the below that if you would like to receive messages from the Genealogical Society of Santa Cruz County about various other events you might be interested in attending. Once you click the blue register box at the bottom, you will receive the Zoom information for the next program. And we also invite you to visit the Genealogy Society website at scgensoc.org. I think I put that in the chat as well. And to save the chat, by the way, you click on chat and you go to the three little dots and click on the three little dots to save the chat. And if you save it right at the end here, you'll get everything that's in the chat. When you visit the Genealogy Society website, you will find the membership application form there. And if you're not already a member, we cordially invite you to join our society. We look forward to welcoming new members. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you next month. Thank you, Janelle.
You're welcome, Gail, and all. Good to see you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sarah.